Hi, everybody. I'm Alice K. Reckelhouse from SufferingWell, and I think we're going to be concluding our series on whether or not Catholics worship idols. There may be more videos if some of you have asked questions in the comments, and then I'll be recording videos for those. If you've asked questions, don't worry, I will be answering that as long as you've asked politely. If you just make horrible accusations, I'm probably going to ignore you. So ask nicely, and I will make a video talking about it. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is bowing before statues, because you do see people bowing or kneeling in front of statues. So one thing that people see when they come to a Catholic mass or just go to a Catholic church is that Catholics who come in will usually either bow or genuflect, which means to get down on one knee as they come into the actual church, what we call the nave, what Protestants would call the sanctuary. And the reason that we do that, when I was a Protestant, I thought that people were either doing that to a statue of Mary that was in the front, or maybe the crucifix or something. It's not. It's actually because we have what's called the tabernacle up in the front there, and that has consecrated communion hosts in it, because we believe that that is Jesus present there in the Eucharist. We're showing our worship of him. So when we genuflect or bow to Jesus, we are worshiping Jesus. Okay, when we genuflect in front of the Stations of the Cross, like I said, that's not worshiping those Stations of the Cross, but we are worshiping Jesus, who we see a picture of, so it's just like if you kiss a picture of your late husband, or if your children kiss a picture of their father who has died, and they kiss that every night, they're not kissing him, they're kissing a picture, but they're thinking of him. They wish that they could kiss him. Okay, so that's when we bow in front of the tabernacle, either when we first come in or anytime that we cross in front of it, we always bow or genuflect to that. You'll see the altar servers, if they walk from one side to the other side of the stage, which is what we call the sanctuary, if they walk from one side to the other and they pass in front of the tabernacle, they will always bow or genuflect to the tabernacle. And it's actually to Jesus in the tabernacle that they're bowing, and they are worshiping him, because we do worship Jesus. At the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. Okay, so, but with the other statues, we're not worshiping that person. Even if it's a statue of Jesus, we're not worshiping the statue. We worship Jesus, but we're not worshiping the statue. If it's Mary or one of the saints, we're not worshiping them at all. Even not just the symbol, but the person. No, we're not worshiping them, but we're showing respect to God. We're showing respect to them. So when you bow, not all bowing is worship. All right, think about it. Japanese people, they bow to each other just out of respect. Okay, it's not worshiping them. It's just bowing because you're respecting that person. It's that culture. In England, if you go to see the Queen or the King, you're going to bow or curtsy in front of them. That doesn't mean that you're worshiping them. You're just showing respect. So when we bow or kneel in front of a statue, it can be because we're just showing respect for that person that it represents, or it could be because we're worshiping God, who that person is reminding us of. That when we bow before when we kneel in front of a statue of Mary, for example, if we're thinking about her fiat, her saying, "Be it done to me as you've said. I'm the Lord's humble servant. Be it done to me as you've said." We're worshiping God, and we're saying, "We want to be like Mary, Lord. Make me like Mary. Help me to be willing to do anything that you say." So we're worshiping God. When that respect that you show to an image becomes worship, then that becomes a problem. And I do think that there are probably some Catholics who do worship Mary. I'm pretty sure of it, actually. And that's wrong. I mean, the church says that's heretical. So it's not that just because some people do something doesn't mean that that is approved by the church or that that's what we're about. Same thing with Protestants. You'll find people who think that, oh, because I went forward at an altar call when I was 6 years old, now I can just go and do whatever I want to do. Okay, that's not right. And I'm pretty sure that like 99% of you would say, oh my goodness, no, that's not what we believe. Okay, but they do it, right? So that makes it true, right? No, that doesn't. Okay, so look at that the same way that you would look at Catholics. Just because somebody does the wrong thing doesn't mean that that's what the church believes. A lot of people who convert from Catholicism to Protestantism say that Catholics worship Mary. Well, they say that because they weren't catechized well, they weren't taught well what Catholics actually believe. So they just saw somebody kneeling in front of a statue, and to them that meant that they were worshiping, and unfortunately they weren't taught otherwise. I have the same situation. One of my children told me recently that Protestants worship the cross, because we would often go forward at the end of a service and we would be on our knees and we would be praying to God. And sometimes there was a cross that was right there, not usually, but oftentimes there was a cross that was right there. And some people would put their hand on the cross and pray. And so my child grew up thinking that we actually worshiped the cross, because it never occurred to me to say, oh, by the way, we don't worship the cross. Okay, so that's the same thing that happens to some Catholics, that they grow up thinking that they're worshiping Mary, and then they hear that you're not supposed to worship anybody but God, which is true, and which Catholics actually believe. And so they think, oh, Catholicism's wrong. Okay, so that's why you hear from former Catholics that Catholics worship Mary, but those are Catholics who did not know what the truth is. They weren't taught well. And that's something that the church is trying to correct, because in the last century, apparently there was not very good catechesis of a lot of people. So a lot of people misunderstood what they were actually doing. So anytime that you have that happen, that's a problem. And it happens the same way in Protestant churches too. People don't understand something, and so they do the wrong thing. That doesn't mean that that Protestant denomination actually believes and teaches that. Okay, and a pastor would correct them and say, no, this is wrong, or it's heretical. Any Catholic priest would, if they knew that somebody was worshiping Mary, they would correct them, because that is heresy. It's a sin. You do not worship Mary. You don't worship anybody except God. Okay, so when people do worship something like that, then it's a problem. And we have an example of that in 2 Kings 18:4, where the people had actually started to worship that bronze serpent that Moses had put on the pole, so that people could get healing from looking at it. God had told them to do that. And so he had that bronze serpent destroyed because people were actually worshiping it. So that can happen. And so you have to always make sure that you know, why am I doing this? What am I doing? What is the reason for it? Okay. So another example that you should probably think about, that I kind of alluded to a moment ago, is that oftentimes in a Protestant church, you'll have an altar call, or sometimes it's for salvation, sometimes it's, to make a commitment to something, and people will come forward and they'll bow down. They'll get down on their knees, or maybe you'll be sitting at home with your Bible and you get down on your knees because you are so much in awe of what you're reading that you just feel like you have to bow before God. I know I felt that a number of times. There were times when I laid on the floor prostrate because I was worshiping God so much in my Bible reading. When Protestants come forward and they get on their knees and they bow, if you took a picture of them all facing forward, and the preacher's up there and he's saying, come up here for this and pray over this and everything, it would look for all the world in that picture like you're worshiping that pastor, okay? Or like you're worshiping the cross, if there's a cross there, or whatever. All right, you're not. I know that. I know that you're not worshiping that pastor. You better not be, right? So in the same way, even though you see pictures of people kneeling in front of a statue of Mary, that doesn't mean that they're worshiping her. There are other reasons to bow. There are other reasons to kneel. So I hope that this helps you to understand that. If you still have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And again, Accusations I pretty much don't answer, especially if they're said in a rude way or in a way that I can tell the person's not really looking for answers. They're not interested in hearing what the truth is. They just have already made up their mind. I just don't bother with that. But if you ask me a question, then I'm happy to answer that. And so there may be more videos to this series because there may be other questions that other people have. If you have an objection, but you can't think of how to say it in a question, just say, you know what, I'm not trying to be assuming anything, but what about this, and then state your objection, and I'll know that you're actually trying to ask a question. Okay. I love you all, and I would love to have some discussion about this. So please do tell me what you think in the comments below. I love you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.